Well, Larry, we were talking about you going into coaching, wanting to go into coaching. Who were your mentors, or who had a lot of influence on you as far as the type of coach you were?
Well, again, the first person would be my dad, who coached. And, I pretty much followed him around and watched him at practice and working with his teams. And I was what was called the towel boy back in those days,
Mm-hmm.
listening on the huddles. And then my high school coach was he got us in shape. He got us to play together. We played a lot of zone defense, probably because I wasn't a very good defensive player, but or maybe I was so small that he thought people would post me up. And then in college, Coach Nelson, those would be the three. But I want to mention Jim Luchin. Jim Luchin is a gentleman I followed. My first college coaching job was at Central Methodist College, now university. And Jim Luchin is the gentleman I followed. And he was the athletic director during my time there. And he was such a good mentor to me. And then Bob Eigelhart, who I was an assistant at Northwest Missouri State. I was only an assistant for 2 years in my 51 years of coaching. And then, all the outstanding assistant coaches I've been around, but mainly those first three that I would mention would be my dad and my high school coach, Tom McDaniel, and my college coach, Jim Nelson.
Okay. Was it the demeanor that they had, or the organizational skills that they had in practice, their tactical expertise? What was it that
well,
I
I had not been coached by anybody else, but looking back on it, one of the things that I'm not a cusser. I'm not saying I've never said a bad word in my life, but I never heard it. I don't remember ever hearing a bad word in my home growing up. And then I go to and then Coach McDaniel comes in. I didn't hear any of that from him. I didn't hear it from Coach Nelson. But just their demeanor, the type of people they were, the relationships they had with their wives and their children, they were just a great influence on me. And as were Jim Luchin at Central Methodist and Bob Eigelhart at Northwest. But I was blessed to be. I don't think I knew how good I had it, but I was very blessed with those gentlemen in my life.
Did you adopt like their offensive plays or defensive plays or whatever, or did you?
Well, like most guys, when I first started coaching, I did what I did in college. We played the shuffle offense, which you know about, and I think you ran it maybe a little bit in your early years at Benedictine. I think I came up and scouted, and I looked at that offense. It's a shuffle. And for 4 years, we played the Drake Shuffle. And silly me, I thought that was because we played Drake University. Their coach, Maury John, had gone to William Jewell College. And so we played him a couple of times. I thought the Drake Shuffle was after Drake University, but it was after Bruce Drake, the coach at Oklahoma. Found that later on. But played that all 4 years at Jewell. And our zone offense was the shuffle with keeping the post player inside in the zone, and then all the cuts you made in the shuffle without the screens. And so my first year at Harrisburg, Missouri, and my first 4 years at Central Methodist, that was our primary offense. Defensively, what we did at Jewell, my 4 years, we played a 2-2-1 press, the UCLA press.
That was a good press.
John Wooden won his first national title in Kansas City at Municipal Auditorium in '64. And then we played a 1-3-1 zone, similar to what Kentucky ran a few years with Coach Hall. So it was mostly zone for me. I played very little man-to-man. In high school, we played what is now called a plunger defense. And I used that some in college. And if I had a middle guy that could do that, when the ball's at the top of the key, it looks like a 1-2. When it's at the wing, that guy at the point drops to the middle, it looks like a 2-1-2. And when it's in the corner, of course, all zones look like a 2-3 when it's in the corner. But he would drop. He would play the entire middle. And I think I used to call it the plunger, but it was our nickname was the Huskies. Now, you look at me, I wasn't a Husky guy, but our nickname in high school were the Huskies. And so a lot of people called it the Husky 1-2-2. But so I played pretty much zone. But I went to a lot of clinics, learned a lot about man-to-man, and learned a lot from the assistant coaches that I was blessed to be around. But pretty much used what I played in college initially in my coaching career.
I know as you developed as a coach, as you moved throughout your career, you probably changed things, and maybe even significantly towards the end of your career. How would you describe that compared to what you were doing earlier in your career?
Well, I'll go back to my fifth. Let's see. I was at Central Methodist 6 years, and after my fourth year, I actually traveled out to Colorado. I was recruiting a couple of players from Northeastern Community College, and their coach, Coach Edwards, had an offense he called spots and over that he invented. It later became known as the flex. And in the spots part of it, it was a 4 out, 1 in, 4 outs. You know, you pass down, you pick across. I mean, there were rules to it, but the post player most of the time moved to the ball. When the ball's at the wing, he got straight line with the ball in the basket, and all those fundamentals. And then the over part of it was actually the flex cut. You pass guard to guard, and there was a cut over the center. Well, he called it over. And so I recruited one of those players. One of those players came and played for us at Central Methodist. And with phone calls back to him, and with that player of his being in the program, I put in basically the flex offense. So my last 2 years at Central Methodist, we ran that. All 4 years at Central Methodist, at Northwest Missouri State, didn't use it as much my first 2 years as an assistant, but used it a little bit. And then my last 2 years as head coach, used spots and over, which is the flex. And then my first 12 years maybe at William Jewell, that was our primary offense. And then I had a good group of freshmen that I had recruited, and I didn't want the returning players. I was kind of honored this way. I didn't want any of the returning players to have an advantage over the freshmen, because I knew the freshmen would have a chance to play a lot once they got there and learned the system. Looked for a new offense. I was also looking for a 1 guard front, and I do some of my best work in the restroom. And when I go to the bathroom, I'll take a book. Well, I took an article on Fresno State's 1-4 offense, and Gary Colson was the coach. So I read it. I liked it. I called him. He sent me video. I talked to him back and forth, and we put it in, and we called it Fresno because I got it from Fresno State's coach, Gary Colson. So we ran that for a long time. And then my last 2 or 3 years, we were blessed to have 4s and 5s who could handle the basketball. In fact, we started 5 guys who had played point at some time in their career. One was 6'6", one was athlete of the year at Jewell, and one was 6'5". Both of them are playing professionally overseas, by the way. Even though we had a 6'6", 6'5", they had both played point guard. So we went to a 5 out, went much like you see on TV now, with high pick and roll and open middle, and get in there and have guys that can all dribble and pass and catch and shoot the 3. I was a lot smart. I'm a lot smarter with good players on the floor. And I'm blessed. The Fresno offense was an inside offense, Joe. We tried to take it inside, and had the pleasure of coaching a couple of guys that played for you, and Andrew Poston and Nick Larson. And Nick especially was an outstanding player for us, 2-time All-American, and he would have been a 3-time All-American, except we had to sit out a year between NAIA and NCAA. We were NCAA conference-wise, but we weren't eligible for any postseason awards or postseason play. So be an All-American his senior year, but was blessed with a lot of good post players, really good. I think we had 18 All-Americans at William Jewell in my tenure, and 14 of them played the 4 or the 5. And so we were even though I liked the 3-point shot, I kind of liked the traditional 3-point play because you got the other team's big men in foul trouble a lot of the times. And that helped us late in the game.
You talked a little bit about your growing up and being, I'll call it religious, and we were religious when I was young too. Hopefully I'm still religious. Did you try to develop the whole person as opposed to just the basketball skills of the kids that played for you?
We did, and you know, they're obviously the 3F model. I bet in your book that you followed. What's interesting about that is when I would sit down with parents, I would tell them, I said, here's my priority for your son. Faith and family should be at the top, whichever order you have it in. Hopefully it's faith and then family, but those should be the top two priorities I would have for your son. Third is clearly education. That's got to come next. We're not preparing players for the NBA. You know, hopefully we're preparing them for life. And then basketball comes after that. Now, did all of our players have their priorities in that order? Absolutely not. You know, but that's what I wanted for them. And that's what I talked to the family about on a recruiting visit. And now that we're having Zoom calls with former teams that I've coached, they talk about family and how we actually enabled them to create a new family of their own at William Jewell. We also had a chaplain for our basketball team, and very blessed to have that throughout. We would always say the Lord's Prayer, you know, before every game, home or away. And reading your book, there's a lot of similarities there with what you did with your program at Benedictine, and proud to have done at William Jewell.
Did your faith influence the way you coached?
Well, it did, and I think how I presented myself. I was raised in a family where I never heard a bad word. I do, as you know, I'm writing a book. Chapters is I really came from a broken home. My dad was Baptist, and Mom and I went to the Christian church. That was one of the few. I don't want to say big disagreements that they had, but it was, you know, it was important to me to present myself in a certain way. That's the way it was presented by my family. I had a chance to go to a baseball camp when I was growing up in high school, and it got opted out because of church camp. I went to church camp 7 straight summers at Crowder State Park in Trenton, Missouri, on the west side of Trenton. And I had a chance to go to baseball camp or church camp, and I went to church camp. Also got to go to band camp at Northeast Missouri State a couple of times. But you know, religion has been, I don't force it on them, but certainly encourage them to be involved, and that's certainly something that I profess to the parents and to the student athletes that we had.
At William Jewell, were they required to go to certain faith classes?
We were required to go to chapel twice a week when I was there. I'll tell you something about my grade point. I was an okay student. I had a 3.1, somewhere along there, 3.14. But if you never missed chapel, one day a week it was chapel, one day a week it was convocation, and you were required to go. And if you missed a certain number, you had to take extra hours to graduate at William Jewell College. I mean, when you were there, now somebody could be sitting in your seat, but if that seat was empty, you got marked absent. But if you never missed, Joe, if you never missed in a semester, you got an extra honor point on your grade point average.
Nice.
If you were to look at my transcript, Larry Holley has 8 extra honor points, one for each of the 8 semesters I went to Jewell. I needed that to stay at 3.0. But if you never missed, and I never missed, I wasn't giving up on that one point. But yes, we were required to take Old Testament and New Testament. Now those have changed at Jewell. We're no longer affiliated with the Missouri Southern Baptist Convention. But when I was there, you took Old Testament in the fall, and then you took New Testament in the spring. And I didn't take any other religion classes beyond those, but absolutely, and enjoyed those classes.
When you were coaching, did you ever lose your temper in practices?
Yes, and I'm slow. I'm slow to anger. I will tell you that I am slow to anger. But you know, it didn't happen very often. But I would have my moments. I try not to use any bad language. Mm-hmm. In fact, I had a rule that that if a player said a bad word in practice, they went to the baseline and the entire team did a down and back.
Mm-hmm.
And if it happened again in the same practice, it was down and back twice. I had an instance where it happened 3 times. And after the third one, the captain, who was a senior point guard on our team, and he said, "Coach, I need to talk to these guys." So he got them all over because they now run a sprint, then 2 sprints, and then 4 sprints. And I had to do it in a certain amount of time. I timed them. Didn't make the time, they had to repeat it. So he gets them in the huddle and just gets after him. He probably said a bad word while he's talking to him. Don't say more bad words. We're going to have to do 8 sprints. Not 10 minutes later, that player said a bad word. One of the funny moments of my coaching career, we go to the baseline and they had to do 8 down and back.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's tough.
Yeah, I would lose, on occasion, not very seldom, but I would. And it probably was more effective that way because I very seldom did. And it kind of got their attention if I did, but on occasion, very seldom.
Were you ever ejected from a game?
Good question. The answer is no.
Ah, how many years did you coach? 40 something?
51.
51 years and never got ejected.
Never got ejected. But let me tell you a story. The best team I coached at Jewel, and I had a lot of good ones, was our 87-88 team. We went 32-2. We got to the quarterfinals of the national tournament at Kemper, lost a team that lost to Grand Canyon in the championship game, lost by 2. But we're undefeated and we're playing at Washburn. And I know you had your big time games against Washburn. That was a big rival of yours when you played at Benedict. Yeah. But Washburn, they had won the national championship, NAIA, in 1987.
Right.
This is the next year. So we're playing at Washburn. They had a 24-game home court winning streak. And we're undefeated. They're obviously undefeated. And we play at their place. And I had been to, my wife bought me an outfit from Mr. Guy's. And it was in the show window. I mean, I was dressed to the Mr. Guy 9s. I was really gussied up. So anyway, the game's going on, and Washburn had a really good post player, and he kept planting his right foot in the lane. And there was 2-man crew. And so this happened time and time again, and they're throwing it into him, and he's been in there for half an hour. So this one time, I start counting. And 1, 2, 3.
They don't like that.
And the second time I did that, there was a whistle, and I got a technical foul for doing their job because they couldn't count to 3 fast enough for me. So now it's in the second half. Now, at this time, it took 3 technicals to get kicked out of a game. Okay. So it's the second half, and the officials are not doing as well as I thought they should be doing. And I'm sure I said something, and I got a second tee. Well, in the crowd, the place was packed. And my assistant coach, Lee Carricker's wife, has a great sense of humor, and she knows way too much about basketball because she would ask Lee why we changed to a zone or why we ran out of bounds play. She knew way too much. Well, anyway, so she's sitting in the crowd across from our bench, and she's got Washburn people all around her. Yeah. And so I get my second tee, and the guy from Washburn turns to her and says, "Well, why do you get that second count, that second technical?" She said, "Well, look at the way he's dressed." Brand new outfit on. It was plaid jacket, but I believe I had a yellow shirt on and a multicolored polo tie. And it was in the show. It was Mr. Guy. I was dressed exactly as it was presented. But that was her comment. Well, look at the way he's dressed. So I had 2 tees in a game, but it was when it took 3 to get kicked out, and it was at Washburn, and we won that game.
You won it?
We won it, and we finished. We were 19-0 before we lost. We lost at Baker, and it was a big win. That basketball is still in Baker's trophy case. We were the only undefeated team in the nation, NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3 NAIA at the time, and number 5 in the nation. And I had 2 tees in a game. Today that would get me booted, but there's probably been times I probably should have been booted. But I didn't have a lot of T's in my coaching career.
Yeah, I didn't have many myself, but I actually did get booted one time. It was against Mid-America. I was so angry. We were playing them at our place, and it just seemed like every time we played them, anytime there was a questionable call, it always went their way.
Well, absolutely. I felt the same way about Mid-America. They did. Every call went their way.
Yeah, that night I had it, and I said something, and then referees are extremely sensitive, and I said something. So I got a T, and the reason I got the T is because they went to the line 20 some times, and we had gone to the line twice at our place.
Yeah.
And so when they finally called a foul on them in the second half, I just turned to our crowd and just went, "Can you believe it? They called a foul on Mid-America." and you get the T, and so I turn around and then I'm angry now, and then I start talking to one of the referees who's standing right next to me. I was talking to him, and a referee that was down in front of Mid-America's bench for some reason decided I deserved a second technical. Yeah, and I'm talking to this referee here, and I'm angry, but I'm not cursing or anything like that at the time. And he calls this T on me. Well, that throws me out of the game.
Right.
Then they heard the cursing, and I hardly ever curse. But I just went off, and they had to pull me over, and I went into the locker room and had to watch on our TV the rest of the way. Yeah.
Good for you.
But well, listen, Larry, I'm going to take.
Did you win the game?
Heck no. We did catch up a little bit after I left, which kind of shows how good of a coach I was.
Wow.
So I think we're going to take another break, Larry, and then we'll come back. When we do, I'm going to talk to you some about your recruiting and how you went about doing that.
Okay. Very good.
Thanks.